And I have the screen. Now I have
All
the
right.
screen also in the front of me. So thank you.
Okay. All right. So what do we discuss now? Since you don't have a background in technology, what we're gonna do is we'll go back a little bit to the basics. And so there is this concept of lean agile. Uh, ba- okay, basically, I want to introduce you to what lean agile means. You will hear a lot about frameworks that are trying to be agile. You will hear a lot about frameworks that are trying to be lean. And then now apparently there is the interest in combining both of them. So the idea of being a little bit lean agile. Uh, Before getting into details, maybe we can just analyze the words themselves. What does the word, for example, agile mean to you?
So this is kind of a person or something that can adjust quickly. Um, um, it's difficult for me to find the exact word, but there is exact word for this. But something that is adaptable, flexible. This are how I understand it.
Okay, that's already better than a lot of people because there is a certain sometimes tendency to think of agile as meaning fast. If you don't mind, just 1 second. I think there is some noise coming in. Let me just turn off the window. Yeah, sorry, the noise was too high. I wasn't able to focus.
No problem.
Okay, so yeah, there is a tendency to equate agile with fast. Basically, we think that something that is agile is going to necessarily be faster than something that is not agile. And while there is some truth to it, it's not completely accurate because, for example, if we just imagine a train. Now, a train as a vehicle can be pretty fast, but we wouldn't call a train something that is agile. Whereas a bicycle is potentially less fast than a train. However, I think we could call the bicycle an agile vehicle. Would you agree?
Yes, of course.
Fair enough. So it comes back to the same thing that you pointed out. It's about adaptability. It's about mainly the ability to respond to change. So with a bicycle, if I'm going somewhere and I decide to change direction for whatever reason, I can make that decision fairly easily. Whereas with a train, if I want to change my mind about where I'm going, that's not a very easy decision to make. I have to go to the destination first, and then I can move somewhere else. So agility, in a sense, this is going to be the, the fastest introduction to agility I've done. It is to basically respond to change. That's the main idea. Now, if we move on to lean, what does lean mean to you?
Lead or lean.
Lean.
Lean, kind of a slim.
Okay.
This is the kind of a main thing. Also kind of, uh, but like also it means to um, um, like you can lean on someone.
Uh,
What you
uh,
mean?
Interesting. No, sorry. Sorry, I mean lean as an adjective, not as a verb. So yes, you're correct. It could mean slim. When we say, for example, a lean person, we are talking about a person who's a little bit slim. When we say lean steak, we are talking about, for example, steak that doesn't have fat in it, right? You with me, Isabella?
Yes, could you repeat? Because I had a phone call.
Oh, so
I had to
basically,
turn it off.
yeah, you're correct about lean being equivalent to slim. So when we call a person lean, that means that person is slim. When we call a steak lean, that means we're saying it doesn't have a lot of fat. That's basically what lean is. So can you think of when we talk about the lean framework or lean management, what do you think they're talking about?
I think, but perhaps that it will be a kind of necessary basic thing, not very developed, and maybe focused on the main things.
Okay, you've mentioned a bunch of things. They all could be part of lean, and hopefully lean helps with that. But I guess mainly the main one is that you're reducing waste,
Ah, okay.
right? So if you're reducing waste, yes, you're going to have more focus, and you might be able to you'll have the basic things basically. But the kind of the word that I'm trying to go for is reducing waste. That's the intention behind lean. If you hear lean management technique, that's basically a management technique that's trying, its main objective is to reduce waste in management. Does it make sense?
Yeah, that's interesting concept as well. Yeah.
Okay. So now we have two concepts that are together. We have the ability to respond to change, and then we have reducing waste. Now the question is, why are we putting them together? Why am I talking about lean agile? What's the relationship between these two things? Between being lean and agile?
Yeah, I think it's actually intelligently connected, because even people who want to live a kind of a minimal way, minimalism, then they are also very flexible, and they manage things in such a way that they don't waste things. Sorry, I just missed the word,
Okay.
the pronunciation, and time as well, and money.
Fair. So you're saying that if you're lean, then you're by default going to be agile, or are you saying if you're agile, you're going to be lean?
I I think mm,
It can get tricky, right?
a little bit, but I think they kind of supplement each other.
They could potentially supplement each other. Okay, let me give you an example that maybe will help illustrate the kind of relationship you might have between lean and agile. So, what's your favorite vocation destination?
Favorite destination?
A vocation destination. Where would you want to go for a holiday?
I don't know. Yeah, let's put Turkey.
Turkey. All right. So let's assume you want to go 5 days to Turkey. Like you're planning to go for a 5 day holiday to Turkey. And now the decision you have to make is you want to pack your bags, right? But I'm going to give you an instruction. You are an extremely agile person. So that's your mindset. when you're trying to pack your bag. And what does that mean? As an agile person, you want to be able to respond to change. So what decisions would you make if you want to pack your bags in a way that makes you ready for basically any change, able to respond to as much change as possible? What kind of decisions would you make?
So I would take items that may be potentially multi-purpose,
Okay.
if possible, and something that some easily foldable items that are lighter, that are smaller, so that I can pack more if I need.
Okay.
This type of adjustments.
Fair enough. Would you say you'd pack more items because you're being agile, or you'd pack less items?
I could have even more items, but this really depends. If
Okay.
I need them, then I can have more items, but it has to be, everything has to be justified.
Fair enough. So let's assume that the kind of change that you're trying to be ready for is change in weather. So there is a chance that it's going to be very hot when you reach there. There is a chance that it's going to be raining. And let's also add in, there is a chance that you might be tempted to go somewhere where there is snow. So these are all possible changes that could happen to your trip. What would you decide when you're packing your bag?
Then I think basically about clothes, right clothes, and then kind of cosmetics, yeah, like let's say sunscreens, something to go to the beach.
Okay.
So this type of stuff, and maybe some clothes may be multi-purpose.
Okay.
And then some clothes like for hiking, for cold weather.
Fair enough. Okay. Now, assume there is also a change that could happen where you might decide to extend your vacation from 5 days, let's say, to 5 weeks. Assuming you have enough time or you're able to work remotely and you really like the place, you decide to just extend your vacation from 5 days to 5 weeks. If you want to be ready for that change, what kind of decisions would you make when you're packing your bag?
Then perhaps more clothes and more money, definitely.
Fair enough. So basically, it all comes down to the same kind of logic. If I want to be prepared for more stuff, I'm most likely going to spend more in terms of what I pack. Does that seem correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Either it's going to be more items or more money or more weight, whatever it is, but it seems to be ready for more. Technically, I might need more. Like that's the kind of relationship. Now, let's assume you are an extremist, but from the other direction. Like you are lean, you believe in lean methodologies. So that means you don't want any waste. And now you're packing your bag. What decisions would you make differently?
That if I don't want any waste.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So I wouldn't make any change.
If you're trying not to have any waste, you would pack the exact same thing as if you were okay with a little bit of waste?
Um, But I didn't say that I was okay with a little bit waste, you know, in the first scenario.
Let me define waste for you then. Let's use this definition so that it
Okay.
helps us. If you pack something and you don't use it, then to me that qualifies as waste.
Okay, okay, fine. Yeah, thank you. So then I would be very careful what I'm packing
Okay.
into my what I put into my luggage.
Okay. So what kind of weather would you pack for?
I would have to pack for any weather actually, because you said the scenario is actually for any weather, all
So
type of
that was
weather.
for
Yeah.
agile. For agile, when you were an agile extremist, you wanted to be ready for any type of weather. But
Okay.
right
Yeah.
now, you're a lean extremist. You went to the other side. So how would you make a decision what weather to pack for?
Okay. So if I understand you correctly, then if I so then I go for basically if I go during summer, I don't expect any snow or anything like this.
Okay.
I just have to check the weather also beforehand if I go for 5 days. So
Okay.
it's quite possible. And then I adjust to the weather that is going to be within these 5 days, maybe with a small exception. Yeah, that maybe, you know, the weather can be actually predicted 3 days ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So with a small adjustment, and I can check the weather's what was the weather like in this area in the last 5 years, and on the basis of this, I can just prepare my luggage,
Okay.
and
Fair
that's it.
enough.
And obviously something for rain and something for hot sun, like something to cover my head and sunscreen and
Mm.
something to go for a beach, you know,
But
this type
but
of
now you're trying to be a little bit agile. You want to be an extremist lean. So don't prepare for change. Just remove
Okay,
waste.
so in the lean concept, I don't prepare for any change.
Yeah. You kind of
Okay.
like at the end of it, you basically, like if I'm paraphrasing what you said, you'll
Mhm.
pick the most likely weather, the most likely destination, the most likely activity that you're going to do, and maybe the most likely duration, and you pack exactly what you would need for that.
Okay.
Does that sound fair as like an extremist
Yeah,
lean position?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It sounds fair. Yeah, fine.
Now we have two positions at the extreme. One is you want to be agile, so you pack as much as possible to be prepared for anything. And the other extreme part is you are lean, so you only pack the absolute necessity, the thing that you know for a fact that you're going to need. Now, what is the problem with both of them or one of them? What is the problem with the agile approach or what is the problem with the lean approach?
So with agile is that I may have things that I may not need, and
Okay,
in the lean approach that I may not have things that I may need.
fair enough. That's a good turn of phrase. So in a sense, you could end up spending way too much money if you're trying to be pure agile, and you could end up basically in a situation where you need something like you need money. You're stuck in Turkey and you need money. You don't speak the language, but tough luck. You have nothing, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So in a sense, if you want to be very agile, if you only think about agile, then by definition, you're not going to be lean. And if you only think about being lean, then you're not going to be able to be agile. Does this sound reasonable?
Yes, yes, it's very clear.
So it's a balance. When you're actually, whenever you try to pack your bag, you try to balance these two things. You try to be able to respond to as much change as you can anticipate, while at the same time you try not to basically waste too much, because you have limited amount of kilograms that you can take with you. You have limited amount of money, you have limited amount of time to prepare. So every time you pack your bag, you're kind of balancing lean and agile. Now, some people may tend to be a little bit more agile, and they will basically pack as much as possible. Now, I'm sure you have friends who pack like 10 bags for a short trip.
Yeah, there are people like this. Yeah.
And then maybe like these people are a little bit more rare, but you might also know some people who would go for month vacation with just their backpack or a small backpack.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Right? So all of us, we fall somewhere within this spectrum. Now, obviously, the extreme agile position is not really realistic. There aren't that many people like that. And the extreme lean position is also not very realistic. There aren't many who are going to be able to survive if they try to do that. We all fall somewhere in the middle. And in everything we do, like in your work, when you try to do something, you're also trying to balance these two things. You're trying to balance your ability to respond to the type of change your client might request, or the type of change your coworkers might expect, or the type of change that might happen to the market. Whenever you're working, whatever it is that you're doing, you try to be able to respond to change while also trying not to invest too much in things that are not necessarily going to be useful for you. Does this sound reasonable to you?
Yes, definitely. Thank
Okay.
you.
Can you think of an example from your job as a linguist?
So yeah, we have to be agile basically. So I can spend maybe 2 hours or 2 days preparing for an assignment,
Okay.
and then like preparing with specific vocabulary,
Okay.
and then at the end, you know, it may not be used there, or it may just be used in 1%, or may not be used at all. Because
Okay.
because we never know, actually. We don't get much details. Um, Usually we don't get much details before the assignment, and then we have to prepare really in a very broad way.
Fair enough. Now, if you don't mind me asking, can you explain to me what kind of assignments you'd usually have?
So let's say if I have a health assignment, and there I have no detail what kind of health problem the person has, then
Okay.
I can try to gather some details, but sometimes I may not get any. So I can just, if I know, let's say that it's about cancer, then I can just, like go through the cancer terminology, but obviously this will be huge terminology, huge amount
Okay.
of, so I can just study the most important things.
Okay.
So for example, this.
So you basically act, I guess, as a translator for patients who are going to the hospital and they don't know how to speak the language. Is that what it is, or it's something else?
Yes, but also other type of basically community interpreting. So this can be
Okay.
anything.
Oh, so let's pick that as an example. If you want to prepare to as much change as possible, I guess it's what you just said. You would basically study all the terms related to cancer, before you go for the assignment. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. But obviously, it's not possible to study everything because mm, uh, it's just not enough time to prepare for this.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, that's the thing with extreme agile. You're gonna spend too much, and all of us, we don't necessarily have that much time or resource to spend. Now, for the other side of the spectrum, if you want to be extremely lean in your preparation, what would you do?
Mm, I would just study main terminology.
Right, the most likely terminology, study only those, and then you go to the assignment. And I'm guessing you've faced situations where you have problems in both sides, right?
What do you mean?
I mean, if you only study the main terminologies, you might go to an assignment where you find out that you don't know the words.
Yes, yes, but then I can
That's,
ask clarification. Yes.
yeah. So that's the problem from the lean side. The problem from trying to be ready for everything is you might end up spending too much time studying things that are not necessarily useful for that assignment.
Yes, correct.
So how do you make a decision on how to balance it? Like, how do you decide, should I study a little bit more or did I study enough terms?
It depends also on how much time I have,
Okay,
because I don't mind. I can, sit down and then study a lot,
fair
but
enough.
I'm not in such an exclusive situation.
Okay, so yeah, it depends on how much time I have in the first place. If I don't have money to spend or time to spend, then obviously I can't do that. What else do you base your criteria on?
I think that's it.
That's
Also,
it?
I may, yeah, but I would say that I may also like a topic, certain topic, and some topics I may not like.
Okay,
So
so
then,
if you like it, you so long as you have time, you're willing to spend a little extra time on a topic that you like.
yeah,
Whereas a topic that you don't like, it's a little bit harder to spend extra time.
yes, yes.
Okay, so these are two criteria. Anything else you can think of?
And then maybe if there is something very serious
Okay,
that I know, okay, I'm going to see a terminal patient, or I'm going to be in some environment, kind of critical environment in any other way, dangerous environment,
nice.
then I'm going to find more time to prepare myself better.
That's interesting. So basically, there is a risk attached. Like, what's the cost of failure? So that's also another criteria for you to make the decision. Anything else you can think of?
Mm, no, I think that's it.
Okay. So in a sense, the basically something about the cost of the impact or the type of change that you're expecting. If the cost is high, that's gonna prompt you to invest more time. Obviously, you are limited by how much time you have in the first place, but it could be also. I think I lost track of my thoughts. Uh, how about how familiar you are with a specific topic? If you're already familiar with something, would you study more for it or less?
Yeah, that's obviously I would study less because then I have to refresh my
Okay.
memory and maybe
How,
study some new
yeah.
things around it.
And I assume also maybe in the hospital or the clinic that you're going to be working, if you're already familiar with them and you have access to resources that could potentially help you if you get stuck, you might not feel the need to study as much. Like you don't feel that much pressure.
Yes, sometimes I may not need to study um, almost I may say not I don't need to study at all, but normally this
Fair enough.
It's quite rarely because mm, all these topics are quite vast.
Okay. So basically, this is like whenever you hear about agile frameworks, these are frameworks that are mainly focused on helping you identify the type of changes that might happen and help you be able to respond to them as much as possible. And whenever you hear about a lean framework, these are frameworks that basically help you deliver value still while minimizing the amount of investment that you have to make. You minimize the waste sort of. Now, any good framework out there will basically have these two aspects embedded in it. So whenever you hear about lean frameworks like Six Sigma or the Toyota Management System, these are frameworks that were developed at the era of manufacturing, when you had to basically build a production line, and the projects usually took years in order to build. So their main concern was cutting cost. They needed to respond to change, but change was slow enough that so long as you had competent people working within the factory, they'd be able to spot the change and respond to it. You didn't necessarily have to manage the change. So they could basically focus mainly on the lean part while allowing for the adaptation to kind of happen organically. Whereas with the new advancement in technology, change became something a lot more frequent. Basically, any one person can basically make a major change to a big application just by themselves. So change became something that's happening a lot more frequently, and they were facing a lot of problems in their ability to respond to change. So the most of the agile frameworks try to optimize the way you increase your ability to respond to change. They also have some lean elements in it, but they didn't necessarily focus on it as much because the main concern was the agility. Right now that we have a bit more maturity, a lot of them are kind of coming back to each other. So you see a lot of lean frameworks adding more agile concepts because even manufacturing is becoming a little bit more agile. There is a lot more change that's happening. Like one example is, for example, cars. It used to be always fuel based. Now there is the option of an electric car. That's technically a very big change for a company that has all its basically uh, all its platforms set up to build specific type of cars. So change is becoming more even in older industries, and also basically more people are getting into, let's say, software where the rate of change is a lot. So there is more of an interest in trying to minimize the cost while you're increasing your ability to respond to change. Does it make sense to you?
Yes, sorry, I changed how the application looks like, so it takes me time
Okay.
to turn on the microphone. Yeah, but it seems to me that it mostly useful to kind of big projects like production and big companies, isn't it?
It's useful when you have more than one person basically relying on each other in order to get some type of job done. Basically, it's good to be aware that you need to be both lean and agile if you're performing your own job independently. Uh, but it becomes more critical to have some sort of standard if you have to coordinate with other people. So in a sense, let's maybe to drive the example a little bit home, let's try to apply the basics of lean thinking, which is trying to draw a value stream. Now, in your job, you have a specific type of customer, right?
Yes.
Who's your customer?
The customer is the company that books me.
Okay, well, what is that company like? What's their role? What do they do?
So let's say like we use this example of a hospital.
Okay,
Or we can just keep that example. I think it would be easy.
sure. Or we can even simplify it further. Let's assume it's the doctor directly,
Okay.
right? So your customer is the doctor. What is the value that they're expecting from you?
They need to get communication across quickly and accurately.
Is that the value?
Yes, they need because they just need me to communicate, to help them to communicate with the patient,
Okay,
so that the patient gets right care and treatment. So this is what they need me for.
sure. So let me maybe reframe it a little bit. Would you say that the communication help is the work that you do, or is it the value that you provide?
This is the value.
Okay. Let me give you another option for value and you tell me if that maybe fits. Would it make sense to say that potentially the work that you do is the help in communication? There is a certain process you go through in order to help with the communication, but the value that you are providing to the doctor is a better diagnosis,
Yeah, that's true.
right? So in a sense, he's using your work in order to come up with a better diagnosis. If he's able to come up with a better diagnosis without you doing the work of the communication, he wouldn't mind.
That's right.
Right? So the value for your customer, it's very important when you're trying to write what's the value, to write the value from the point of view of your customer. So assume you've identified the customer as the doctor. Now we're saying the value that they care about is a better diagnosis. Now, what is the trigger? What makes the doctor want to enlist your services in order to get a better diagnosis?
So that he can treat the patient in the right way.
So that is his objective, but what gets him to even start treating this patient?
Because this is his job. He has to do that.
Fair. But how does he know to start? Like, does he go around in the street and just pick people up and say, I'm gonna treat you? Or what's the
No.
trigger for him to start working with a specific patient?
So that the patient comes to him.
Okay. So technically for the doctor to even start working, the patient has to come to him, let's assume. And there is another condition for the doctor to basically enlist your services. He's not going to enlist your services every time a patient comes to him, right?
Yeah, so he needs a patient that doesn't speak the language.
Right. Doesn't speak, and you speak the language that that patient
Yes.
speaks, right? So that's basically the trigger. The trigger is a patient comes to the hospital and they don't speak your language. They don't speak the doctor's language, but they speak your language. That is the trigger. And the value at the end is a better diagnosis. Is this okay?
Yes.
Right. Now, I would argue your job is to design these number of steps so that you make sure that whenever this trigger happens, they're captured properly and you're walking them through a process to come up with this value, which is better diagnosis. So let me ask you then the question, the moment a patient who speaks your language, comes to the doctor, what is the first step that happens?
What happens at the
Yeah.
moment when the patient comes to the doctor?
Yes, they've realized that they don't speak their language. So what do they do?
They book me.
So I assume you're not the only one that they contact, right? Or are you the only one providing this service for them?
Yes, obviously, yeah, they can choose from the available interpreters.
Okay, so the first step is, do they send a message to all the interpreters?
No, they send the message that to interpreters that they are that they have a contract with.
Oh, so let's assume they have, let's say, 10 interpreters that they have a contract with. They will send a message to all 10. Is that correct?
Actually, it's not just this. They can choose interpreters that they like to work with for some
Okay.
reasons.
So there is a possibility that the doctor is just going to pick one interpreter and they're going to directly reach out to them. If they're free, then they're going to start the process of working, right?
Yes, that's possible. They can request preferable interpreter.
Okay. Fair enough. So the first step is somebody comes to the doctor. Now the doctor chooses their preferred interpreter. Maybe they check the availability of that preferred interpreter. If they are available, then that's it. They book them. If not, maybe they check with another, or do they send an email to a bunch of people?
Yes. Yes. Actually, there is in between a doctor and interpreter, there is the agency.
Okay.
There is another kind of a middle thing, let's say, that makes it easier for doctors to get right interpreter because
Okay.
the agency deals with the interpreters and
Fair enough.
they supply interpreters to
Okay.
doctors. Yeah.
Cool. So it looks like the process could be simple or complex, but let's assume the first step is a selection process. So the first step is a selection process that can either be directly calling someone, or it can be requiring many people to coordinate until they find the right person, right? And it also includes checking the availability and all of that. So does it make sense to say step one for us is a selection process?
Yeah, so first step selection process, yeah.
Okay. Now, step two, I would argue, is the actual time when you and the patient and the doctor are in the same place at the same time.
Yeah, we can say that.
Okay. Can you explain what usually happens, like how long it takes, or
So this really depends. It can be anything between 5 minutes, but just to make it easier, we can say up to 1 hour,
okay,
and then uh, and then interpreter needs to adjust to needs of this consultation.
okay,
So sometimes patient needs to go to another room or for some a special examination or to speak with another consultant or with another healthcare provider. So then interpreter is just assisting in all this process.
Oh, so as an interpreter, you would be attached to the patient, not necessarily the doctor. That means if the patient changes doctors, you'll still be their interpreter? Is that what you're saying, or is it different?
Yes, yes. But during the certain, let's say there is a one assignment. Let's say on Tuesday at 1 p.m. In the hospital for the certain patient, and then that patient needs some complex care.
Mm-hmm.
So usually the interpreter will be with that patient in all these locations to help with to provide interpreting.
Okay. So it could be one session, it could be multiple sessions, it could be one day, it could be multiple days. Or is it only one session?
Usually this is just one session, and then if doctor needs the same interpreter for the same patient or another patient, then can just rebook the interpreter.
Okay. So first step was the selection process. The second step was actually going through the actual interpretation. Now, let me ask you a question. How do you know if you did a good job or not?
Actually, this is a little bit tricky question in this environment because there is nobody else with us
Yeah.
assess, and then obviously if mm, it's basically, let's say, if I'm aware of my mistake, potential mistake, then I can try to clarify this, and this is actually what we do. We just clarify this on the spot. But there is nothing like this.
Okay.
That's why we need the right qualifications to do this job. And then we have to attend training, supplementary training all the time.
Fair enough. So that helps increase your competence, which is definitely good and useful. But I would argue it's maybe important to find a way. Like, let's say we agreed that the value you're providing is allow the doctor to make a better diagnosis. So the value is better diagnosis. Do you have a process for you to know if the doctor made the correct diagnosis or not?
I'm not sure if I got you right. Could you repeat?
So we said that we're assuming your customer is the doctor, and the value that you're providing him is a better diagnosis,
Yes, this is
right?
what we established. Yeah.
Is there a way for you to know that, yeah, the doctor made a good diagnosis or not for the cases that you have consulted in?
I cannot. I would have to be a medical professional.
I mean, you don't have to assess it yourself. Like, you can take the doctor's word, for example. Like, they can give you feedback that yes, the diagnosis was good because the symptoms that you have explained to me were actually accurate. Or they can tell you, no, 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 we thought he told us that he has this issue, but it turned out that he had a different issue, for example. Is there some type of feedback for you to know this, or it's completely hidden from you?
Actually, I would say that maybe this example, it may not be very good. Actually, now I thought that this example may be not the best for
Okay.
the for this presentation. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
But because normally, by definition, we say that interpreter, I'm still questioning what's the value, because normally we consider the value, the main value is to allow communication between these two parties, and this is what we are focused on. And then, as interpreters, and this is not our, this is not our business. Things like diagnosis and other things. So I just thought about this a bit, but like from your perspective and from the project that you try to present, then maybe this needs to be kind of twisted a bit, changed,
Yeah. And this is the type of realization you usually have when you try to do this value stream mapping, which is good. Sometimes we may start with an assumption that the value is X. Then we find out that, as you said, like maybe you don't even have the right to know what the diagnosis is, because that might be actually confidential. So there might be a lot of things that make it so that saying that the value is a better diagnosis for you does not make sense. So then the question becomes, what is the actual value and who is the actual customer? Since we don't have a lot of time, I'm just going to interpret what you said. The value is to make sure that there is seamless communication between the customer and the patient. Is that a better value?
I would say that because
Okay.
I would say that normally we think about right diagnosis. If we are in the shoes of a patient, when we are patients, let's say, then we think about getting right diagnosis naturally. But maybe from the perspective of an interpreter, we think about communication.
Yeah, so your value is making sure that communication is happening, and it's good. Now the question is, if you define your value as communication or good communication is happening, how do you know that it did happen?
Because usually, I mean, this may be just one of the factors that that I can see that something is that this conversation is going on properly, that there is no any strange kind of situations like that they don't say to each other, "What do you mean? I said this," or "I didn't say that," or "What are you talking about?" If there are these things coming up, if I see that there is a misunderstanding and miscommunication, then this is kind of a red light that I'm just trying to find out where is the problem, because this doesn't mean that there is a problem on my side. There may be a problem on somebody else's side, that maybe somebody cannot express themselves, or maybe I misunderstood somebody, or maybe somebody misunderstood, or maybe they misunderstood each other, because I let's say because I didn't use a right register. Let's say the patient is not educated at all, and then a doctor used language register that is too high for the patient, and I didn't change that register.
Okay.
Um,
So if I'm to summarize what you're saying, you use your expert judgment to basically evaluate if the communication is happening correctly or not, right?
yes, that's right. And others may also others may do the same, and they do the
Okay.
same.
So now the question is, assume you're not you're the agency, and you basically have two people. Both of them are interpreters, and both of them are evaluating themselves as being very good. How can you tell if one is maybe better than the other, or if they're really both good? Is there a way for your agency to know if you've done a good job?
They have a so-called feedback form
From the patient or the
from
doctor or both?
sometimes from both, but mostly from a doctor.
Okay,
So this is one way, but this way is not may not be
perfect.
definitely, because this really depends on a lot of things.
The doctor
And
was upset today. Therefore, you've done a bad job. Doesn't matter what you did.
could be, or they may not have time to fill any forms,
Ah, no
and
feedback
they
even.
just they just tick anything, quickly just to
Yeah.
um mm, just to finish this as soon as possible.
Mhm.
They often run late. Um,
Yeah. So let me give you because we're running out of time at the moment. Let me give you an example of how doing something like this could potentially be useful for you or for your agency. If you draw this, now you know what the trigger is, you know what the value is, and you kind of know how you're getting evaluated at. Now, let's assume, for example, the problem that you have is that you're not getting as many, what's it called, assignments as you would like. Now, if you draw this way, it can become a little bit easier to know where the problem is, because potentially it could be that the problem is in the selection step. Maybe during the selection step, they're sending you an email or they're trying to reach out to you to tell you that we have an appointment, but you're usually a little bit slow to respond. So you end up losing a lot of assignments that you are free to do. So that could be where you're losing maybe contracts. Or it could be that, for example, in step 3, that not enough of the people that you are basically providing a service for are filling in the feedback. So the agency, whenever they have to choose between two people, they have one person that has a lot of feedback and they're positive, and they have you don't have that much feedback. So they're not really sure if you're that good or not. So they would prefer somebody with a higher feedback. Now, if you draw this in terms of trigger, steps, and value, it's easier for you to analyze where maybe you can make some adjustments to make sure that you're able to provide a better service. Does that sound useful maybe, or not so much?
yeah, that's useful, definitely. Thank you.
Okay, so that's the idea. Any type of business that we do, at the end of the day, there is a reason why we start doing it. That's our trigger. There is a specific customer that's willing to pay for us to do it. Either their payment is the salary, or their payment is actual payment, or their payment is in their time. And there is a specific value that they're expecting. Now, once I know the trigger, I know the customer, and I know the value, I should work on designing the steps in such a way that I optimize the delivery of this value. So if I see anything in these steps that make it so that the value is harder to get or harder to measure, then the task becomes, how do I optimize this so that I can deliver better value? Fair enough.
Yeah, that's fair. Thank
Okay.
you.
So we basically just had enough time to go through the lean part of it. We didn't go through the agile, But I think it was interesting to go through a specific example that's relevant to you. Hope it was useful for you.
Definitely. Thank you very much. Yeah.
You are most welcome. Yeah, so with this, I guess we come to the end of our session. Let me stop recording.